The Private Pilot Certificate, widely referred to as the Private Pilot License, or PPL. It's one of the most common pilot certificates in America. In fact, according to the FAA, there were approximately 665,000 active pilots in the US last year. Of them, about 161,000 are private pilots. That may not seem like a majority, but think about it this way. If we exclude the almost 200,000 student pilots who have not yet finished their training, you'll notice that just over 91% of pilots have passed their private check ride at some point in their lives. Hey guys, it's ShadowFlyer, and today we'll be discussing some important information when it comes to getting your private pilot certificate. One of the most common questions I get asked is, how much does it cost to become a pilot? Flying planes isn't a cheap thing to do, and if you're going to start working towards a future hobby or a future career in aviation, it's best to know if you can afford to finish the training. So to help get you a better picture of exactly what you'll be paying for, I was able to get an itemized spreadsheet from my recently finished student. Basically, you've got some one-time fixed costs for your equipment, your learning material, your medical, your written test, and your check ride, all of which I've just highlighted. Unless you happen to have a friend or family member who is willing to lend you their headset, kneeboard, etc., you're probably going to spend around $1,500 on these things regardless of where you do your training. From there, you've got two big variables: your instructor's rates and plane rental costs. Multiply that by the number of hours you estimate you'll need, and that's about how much you can expect to spend. Possibly the biggest factor in determining how much it'll cost is how you choose to complete your training. If you go to an airport FBO or join a local flight club and that's how you get your plane and instructor, you will likely find yourself on the Part 61 route. Part 61 is a lot more flexible. It allows instructors to teach based on however they see fit or however they think will work best for that student. And you can find a very wide range of new planes, old planes, young instructors, older instructors, and you'll probably pay somewhere between $8,000 and $12,000. If you choose to go through an official flight school, often found at universities and some airports with higher amounts of general aviation business, you'll find yourself on the Part 141 track. These Part 141 schools are much more structured and generally business oriented. They tend to have nicer planes, better insurance, and full-time instructors. But this often means the rates are significantly higher. You can generally expect to pay anywhere from $15,000 to over $20,000 for the same certificate you get at a Part 61 school. The next biggest factor, other than whether you go Part 61 or Part 141, is your expected timeline in getting all this training done. Now, for a Part 141 school, a lot of this timeline is already structured, so you don't have as much say. But for a Part 61 especially, the timeline will depend on your availability, the plane's availability, the instructor's availability, weather, and a little bit of Murphy's Law. In my opinion, most students will learn and retain the most information if they can fly 2 to 3 times a week, taking about 3 additional days to just study and review the material, and about 1 to 2 days off every week to rest or do whatever they need to do. If we assume each flight is about an hour and a half long up until the cross countries, that student should finish up in just over 3 months, not including the check ride itself. Part 141 schools run their training off a standard syllabus, which has been proven successful and also approved by the FAA. But it may not be tailored to individual students. So even if they say you'll finish up in 4 months, you may spend a lot more time training during those 4 months than in your Part 61 equivalent, which for the private pilot course results in more instruction time than may truly be needed. However, this is pretty optimistic timeline for many, and it's not uncommon for a 3-month goal to turn into a year-long endeavor. If you start adding in large breaks into your training, you can expect to spend more time with your instructor reviewing material, which means you're going to spend more money on that instructor. Or if you have to review in the plane because you're practicing landings or maneuvers, you'll spend more time on both the instructor and the plane. So having these long breaks in training just means you're most likely to spend more money. A lot of people go into this training trying to save as much money as possible. They want to get it done with the bare minimums. And I don't necessarily think that's wrong, because I myself am a huge penny pincher, but I couldn't tell you how many times I've heard the phrase, when the cheap becomes expensive. In other words, buying cheap equipment might save you $300 now, but you may end up spending that extra money later when that cheap equipment breaks, or you'll wish you had spent it when you take a 2-3 hour cross-country flight in a $70 headset. Another example would be refusing to buy extra study material just because, oh, there's more free stuff online, which I love the free stuff. In fact, every time I get a student, I often refer them to the free stuff because it is good material. However, if you don't actually spend the time to read or watch these nice materials that are provided to you, you'll find yourself spending hundreds of dollars paying your instructor to review the information that you should have learned on your own. Or you may just cause yourself unneeded stress when you show up to a test woefully unprepared. Another example of the cheap becoming expensive is finding a flight club that the rates are just incredibly low and you think, oh, like they're unbeatable, this is going to be the most cost-effective route. But always dive a little deeper than just those initial prices, because while that will play a huge part in how much it costs, you may find out that that plane is being used by 50 other pilots and it's never available, which causes, again, those unnecessary breaks in your training. Or if it's a really old plane and it's constantly in maintenance, the same thing can happen. You can't fly the plane, so you're spending more money because you're taking large breaks in your training. And if you're in a flying club, there's usually monthly dues you're paying as well. So if you're having to cancel flights or delay things because of maintenance or other pilot scheduling, then that may not be the most cost-effective route for you. If you want to save some money, here are my personal tips. For your private pilot training, do a quick Google search and find a couple Part 61 schools or clubs in the area near you. Or if you don't really find any, call a local FBO and see if they know of any. Try to get a few options, because if you limit yourself to just one choice, if it's not a good choice, you'll feel like you have to go there when you shouldn't feel like you have to do that. So find a couple options if you can. From there, find a few instructors, ask around, see who's a good instructor. You may not be able to know if they're a good instructor because you haven't flown with them, but meet up with them in person and get to know their personality. If you two have clashing personalities, it's not going to go well. Your training, both in the cockpit and out, is not going to be as efficient or as effective as it would be with a good instructor. Most importantly, find out that instructor's availability. If they're only available once a month, it doesn't matter if they're the greatest instructor on the face of the earth. They're not going to get your training done nearly as quickly as you want to get it done. If they are available though, if they just happen to be at the FBO or flight club that you want to go through because they have the best plane rates, then great. If not, see if they're willing to go. A Part 61 school generally the instructors can kind of freelance it. If they want to go to a different airport, they might be willing to, and then you don't have to deal with that airport's stinky instructors. But whatever you choose to do, match the instructor's availability with the plane's availability and use that to decide where you're going to go. From there, decide on a realistic timeline and commit yourself to freeing your schedule as much as possible during that time. Try to fly at least once a week, preferably 2 or 3 times, but not necessarily more than 3 times. Spend a few hours every day, especially the days you're not flying. Use those days to study the material, whether that's reading or watching, however you see fit. But go over that material now before you get to the plane or have to start paying your instructor. And most importantly, chair fly. If you're not into the private pilot training right now, you may not know what that is, but trust me, that is a huge way to save money in the plane. If possible, take at least 1 day off a week to just rest and decompress. Remember to enjoy the process. Don't let aviation stress you out. If it's stressing you out, it's either not for you or you're doing it wrong. Aviation is supposed to be fun and exciting for everyone, including you as the trainee. So take a day off every week to rest, clear your head, don't overcomplicate things. There are a lot of great resources on the web, so use them to your advantage. If you do decide to buy things, whether it's study materials or otherwise, make sure you pay attention to when they expire. For example, sectional charts have an expiration date. They expire every 6 months. If you're going to begin your training, let's say September 5th, so it's already been September 5th, I believe the charts expired September 10th, don't buy the sectional for 5 days. Even if you are further in your training and you need that sectional, work with your instructor. There's usually a way around it. You're going to need a current sectional for when you take your check ride, but that doesn't necessarily mean you need to buy one that will only last you 1 week during your training. Also, the FAR AIM and a couple other materials. So this is my copy from last year. If you notice, it says 2020, which when you're in a store and you say, oh, it's 2020, it's currently 2020, so this must be the right one, you'd be wrong. The current edition is actually the 2021 version. So pay attention to the expiration dates. If you find something that is only going to be helpful for you for a week and then the next edition's out, just wait a week and then buy the new edition. The more you study on your own, the less you're going to have to repeat training and the less time you're going to have to spend with the instructor, which saves you money and helps your budget so that you can continue flying in the future. That's all I've got for today. I hope this video was helpful for you. I'm going to have a few more private pilot videos in the future. So if you liked it, hit that thumbs up button and feel free to subscribe. Have a great day, guys.